Welcome back to Dealmakers Conversations, where we sit down with M&A minded business leaders to talk about how they run their organizations and their thoughts on deal making. In this segment, we sit down with Brian Hill, the founder and CEO of Adevo, another of this year's Dealmakers Awards honorees. Brian and I talk about how he and Adevo are disrupting their industry and how the proceeds of a recent division's divestiture are fueling his company's growth. We think you'll like this. Brian, thanks for joining us here at the Dealmakers Conference, and congratulations again.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Thanks. So you've been able to do a lot of things with this company, Adevo. You've raised capital, you've sold parts of it off, you've re-engineered the company all over the past few years. Do me a favor, share a little bit about the journey that you've had with the company.
Yeah, no, we operate a pretty unique space generally, so there's uniqueness across the board. But as we navigate a new industry, which is education in corrections, it took a lot of discovery. So I always tell folks we spent the first 3 years convincing jails and prisons that they could provide technology inside safely. We spent the next 3 years navigating procurement because we're dealing with government, working with government, and we bought a phone company as part of that because it was clear procurement was going through that path. There's a lot of infrastructure that we had to provide as well as the software, so that was part of the journey and part of the fundraising and everything from debt to equity to acquisition, like you mentioned. And then we realized it was distracting us from some of the core things as a mission-driven company that we wanted to focus on. And so we divested that phone company in a successful way, and did so that way we could then actually get broader market reach and reach the market, target the market in a very specific way around impact and education inside the prisons and jails.
Tell us a little bit about the phone company. Did you acquire that? You found it before you sold it?
And when we that was definitely an acquisition. I wouldn't wish regulated telco on anybody after that experience, but it is, again, we acquired it because in this space, procurement of tablets, we were doing technology, we were doing education through tablets in jails and prisons. But the way procurement was working is that heavy infrastructure cost needed to be bundled together with the phone contracts that we're getting in. That they were accustomed to buying. And so we partnered with the phone companies for a while, but realized we had a different mission and focus. So we acquired one. And then with that, very quickly and successfully went out and won business against some of the big players. But again, realized it was a bit more of a distraction from the core that we cared about and the impact we wanted to drive. And so we, despite it being a profitable venture, we divested it so we could refocus on the things that mattered most.
When was the divestiture?
It was, I would say, it is just finishing. Entering and exiting a regulated telecommunications space is not a quick process. So I think it was almost a year going in and almost a year going out.
Any surprises other than the regulation component of it?
I think what's interesting about the telco space is how rapidly it continues to move. I mean, when you're telco, it's just really since the 80s and early 90s has just been on a breakneck speed, changing every minute. Startups are coming, getting acquired. I mean, it's a world of acquisition. So it was interesting to see that from the time we entered the market, there was probably 10 major players. To the time we exited, and there were 3 major players. So even here we are in the late into the 2020s, and the level of acquisition and consolidation is still happening in telco, which was a little surprising.
Yeah, it's a constantly moving industry. Adevo serves, as you mentioned, a unique market. How are you able to identify a gap in that marketplace and develop the solutions you have?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's definitely a unique market with and niche would be the right word to describe it. I was working on a JD MBA at Northwestern and was actually working on a unique financing vehicle called a social impact bond to reduce the population of Cook County Jail. That wasn't really going to be the right vehicle, but spending hours inside of Cook County Jail, you see 9,000 guys sitting around at the time watching Jerry Springer, and you just think, this is a mess. This is America, and this is a key piece that we need to fix. So that was really the driver. But stemmed also from my father. My father was a teacher, spent some time teaching inside Folsom Prison in California, where I grew up, and so at night would read us the bedtime stories of his students' essays at night, and that was definitely gave me early touch points into some of the challenges we face in corrections and incarceration in America.
And listening to Johnny Cash, right?
That's right. That's right. We like to think he's that old.
Yeah. Hey, so tell us a little bit. How does the product work exactly?
Yeah. So again, you have 2.25 million people around in prison or jails in America and in any given day, and they're pretty much not doing much. Mostly watching daytime television. The majority. There's some classes, but it's very limited. And so we have brought in effectively introduced the idea of installing wireless networks and in bringing in secure tablets to make our Adovo educational platform available. And it's educational, vocational training, and treatment programming to really reach everybody on a daily basis. If we believe that rehabilitation is a critical component of incarceration, which I hope we can settle on that in the United States, then the only way we're going to be able to effectively do that financially and operationally is through technology. And so that's what we've provided. Tablets wirelessly connected in a secure way to an educational platform that gives them daily free access to education and treatment.
What did it take to build the relationships you have with your client base, these institutions that are then distributing these and making them available to the population?
Yeah, when you're dealing with this is a B to G business for sure. So we're working with governments. Every county has a jail, every state has a prison system, and the federal government has the Bureau of Prisons. And so and they're all very much their own fiefdoms. And so you're going one by one on some of those. But there's the most important part for our industry is you have to be established, which is why you see a lot of acquisition and M&A happen in the space, because as an early entry point, it took us, some pretty significant will to get into the first few. And then it was through partnerships that we could expand further because of the relationships and the credibility that we'd established. And then through acquisition, we were able to get into several more. And then through divestiture and partnership, we're getting into all of them over the next year. So it's been pretty exciting to see that. But it's a true entrepreneurship. Get into few, prove yourself, partner, acquire, partner, figure out how to make it, because we're always trying to figure out how do we reach everybody who's incarcerated, give everybody the opportunity to make a change in their life.
There's been a lot written about your company over the last couple of years in some national media, using it as an example of really how do we change things within the system itself. What is the widespread use that you've got organizations that are partnerships in how many states and how many different institutions?
Yeah, so we've just signed agreements that will allow us to reach every prison facility in America that has tablets, and nearly every jail that has tablets as well. By the end of 2022, that'll reach about 500,000 people every day. So about a quarter of the population would be expected would have the technology and Adovo in their hands, and that growth trajectory is actually pretty rapid. Tablets it took a little while for the market to adopt, and now it's an inevitability. Everyone will have a device in their hands by the end of probably 2024, but most will have it by 2023.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. When you were raising different capital rounds for the business, how challenging or even easy was it to identify capital sources that were interested in the space?
Yeah, so we fall into a pretty unique category, which is the impact investing space for sure. I mean, we're about as bullseye in that space as you can get. We're a social enterprise that's designed to be a profitable enterprise, but designed in a way that's clearly trying to address one of the more challenging aspects of social justice in America. And so the impact investing space is pretty hungry, and we came in early, so this is about 8 years ago. But I would say we found that Chicago and broadly across the country, everyone's looking for good entrepreneurs and good business opportunities, especially in the impact space. I think the dollars are very ripe there, but it's got to be true impact, and it's got to have upward potential. And it's hard to find those opportunities. So we were very fortunate. We found everything from early angel investment to institutional venture investors. We found philanthropic capital, so program-related investment coming from foundations as well. And then mission-related investment at later stages. We found philanthropic debt, so low-interest debt. So we really took the entire capital stack. We're very fortunate to find a pretty willing body to try both to solve this problem and do it in a way that was profitable.
With your most recent rounds of capital raise, how are you deploying that? What are you going to be using those funds for?
Yeah. So most recently, I mean, the most recent raise was done for actually the acquisition of the communications company. We haven't raised since then because we've used that, again, the profitability off of that business, as well as the divestiture of that business. And we've returned a little bit of capital, we're returning capital and then using that investment as we think about how do we grow. So now that we're scaling across all of these, every device across the country, we have to think a lot more about scale and impact. How do we help every person across the spectrum within prisons and jails on a daily basis? So a lot in the technology for sure, and then into some new products as well that we believe will add more value and for both the individuals on the inside as well as for our investors.
Any lessons you learned from your foray raising capital and getting into the telecommunications, other than a nice divestiture that helped you really fuel the next stage?
Yeah, I would say avoid it at all costs. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think, look, I feel like the market is always hungry for good opportunities. And so you'll hear every once in a while, there's not enough capital in the marketplace. But the reality is that there definitely is. I feel like there's always capital and willingness for businesses that are truly finding niche markets or finding good opportunities. So I think it's about telling your story. It's about the passion that you have and about creating value and navigating what can be some pretty unique spaces.
Excellent. Well, Brian, thank you again for sitting down with us. Congratulations again, and a great story.
Thanks so much. No, it's been a fun journey.
I'm going to ask you a question now about Austin, so I can use this for that.
Sound good? Sure. Totally.
So, Brian, during the pandemic, you and your family relocated, and now you're down here in Austin as an entrepreneur who is running a business in another city, but with a reach that reaches down here into Austin. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, you look at a concentrated city that I was in Chicago, and realize that with a family of 4 daughters, we wanted a little bit more space, but also we were looking for a great city with an incredible tech scene, good universities, access to airports. We run a national company, and you definitely don't need to be in one place anymore. In fact, what we learned through the pandemic as well is we actually shuttered one office and are looking to potentially close the other and have a complete remote workforce. We've been remote for the last 2 years, but for me and for our family and for a couple others in the company, Austin was the right place. It's a pretty enticing city.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. It's definitely an exciting scene down here, and thanks for joining us again.
You bet. No, love Austin.